Government 2305, American Federal Government, Module 1.10, How Do Ideas Affect Politics? Most political scientists agree that the 8 ideas presented in Chapter 1 are central to American society. But how do these ideas influence our politics? There are 2 familiar answers. First, either ideas influence our culture, or second, they operate through our institutions. But there is a third possibility to bear in mind. Perhaps ideas have a life of their own. Each nation has a unique political culture constructed over the years by a people and its leaders. Anthropologist Clifford Geertz described culture as the stories a group tells about itself. Ideas such as liberty, the fear of government, individualism, and the American dream together are the foundation of American political culture. They are the stories we tell about ourselves. A culture shapes the way people think about politics and government. Culture develops slowly over time, shaped by history and experience. Our American political culture goes all the way back to colonial America and its shared beliefs, stories, and mental habits. Their culture inspired the founding generation to develop a constitution that limits the power of government. Why did the framers add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution? Because of their abiding faith in individualism. Why are there so many checks and balances in our national government? Because of a fear of too much national government dating back to colonial times. Why do we regulate tax less than other nations? The American dream leads men and women to fight for policies that reflect freedom of democracy. Policies that reflect social democratic solidarity are more difficult to win because they resonate more faintly through American culture. Americans' hopes and fears often seem peculiar to people in other nations, just as their hopes and fears may not resonate in the United States. A different perspective suggests that ideas operate through political institutions. James Madison explained the institutional perspective. Past political theory expected Republican citizens to virtuously seek the public interest, but Madison continued sardonically in the Federalist Papers, enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm. The Constitution did not ask people to be virtuous. Instead, it developed a government that would operate smoothly even if its citizens were greedy and all their leaders corrupt. The institution, the rules, the organizations were built into the government and would shape political behavior. Many political scientists follow in Madison's footsteps. It is our governing institutions, starting with the Constitution, that developed American politics from an institutional perspective. The barriers to enacting new programs emerge not from a dislike of government, but from the way the government is organized. The U.S. government is slow to act according to this view because it is designed that way with multiple checks and balances. On every level of government, when Americans criticize their policymakers for inaction, perhaps they miss the point. Gridlock is a consequence of the institutions we have inherited. Although historians and sociologists tend to emphasize political culture, many political scientists are skeptical about its explanatory power. How, they ask, can something as static as national culture explain the fluid, fast-changing American political scene? They look towards institutions for a greater explanation. For example, the cultural perspective suggests that the United States has never passed national health insurance because Americans do not trust government. There's the limited government idea in action. The institutional perspective counters that it is less a matter of popular belief and more the way that the government is designed. After all, they continue, Harry Truman won the presidential election in 1948 in part on promising national health insurance, but Congress, using checks and balances central to our national government's institutions, buried the proposal. Proponents of culture as the primary driver of politics respond that cultural values are not meant to explain every possible political action. Events, leaders, movements, and government agencies all introduce change. But culture forms a boundary. It limits the possibilities, shapes our perceptions, and influences our reaction. Ideas, culture, and institutions all reinforce one another. Truly understanding a nation means understanding all three. So let's quickly review. How do the foundational ideas that we've learned in this chapter influence politics? Political scientists point to three different ways. First, ideas shape American culture, which in turn affects our politics. Second, and most popular among political scientists, ideas operate through political institutions. We must study those institutions to appreciate how ideas shape politics and policies. Third, ideas may have their own independent power.